Welcome back to The Village. Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today I'm going to be doing the Prisoner Mini Moke. I could buy a Prisoner Mini Moke in rough condition on the internet, but it's more expensive than buying the green one. And I had a few choices to make, and I chose this green one because it had the wheels, hubs, and tires all in good condition, and the casting is there. These mini mokes generally in rough condition don't have any of the accessories. So for converting this mini moke, I would need to buy all the bits and pieces anyway. So I got this one, which turned out pretty good. The Prisoner is a show that I really enjoy. It was something that was, and when I was in college, my English professor on Fridays would show us an episode of The Prisoner and we would analyze it, which was terrific. The Prisoner was done by Patrick McGoohan, and he was offered the job of being James Bond, but he was doing Danger Man as a spy, and when he got bored with that show, he resigned and he created the show The Prisoner. And in the opening credits, he's driving a Lotus Super 7. The Super 7 was a car that you bought as a kit. You bought all the parts and you had to assemble it yourself. And this was done by Lotus in order to avoid a British car tax of some sort. And by buying a kit, you didn't have to pay that tax. But you also couldn't have an assembly manual. So there was no assembly manual, but somebody did publish a disassembly manual. And if you read that backwards, that would help you assemble your Lotus Super 7. So it's the ultimate rebel car. And in the opening credits, Patrick McGoohan drives into the parking garage and he takes the slip out of the machine. And before the gate can open, he drives under the gate. So he's the ultimate rebel. So I've used here my file to remove the hubs. My file has one edge that has been ground smooth, so I can file right up against the hub and take that mushroom off. And you can see it goes fairly quickly. If I was to go and get my Dremel tool and set up the right grindstone and find a piece of plastic to protect the wheel as I'm taking it off and make a whole pile of noise, it's easier for me to just take it off with the file, and that's why I do that. It comes off pretty quick. This shows you the entire time it took to take these hubs off. So this casting turned out to be pretty good because there was no damage to it, and I need to replace all of the parts anyway. I would need to buy a new canopy, a new hood hinge, steering wheel, and the spare tire cover. All of that stuff needs to be purchased new anyway in order to do this conversion. And even if I got an old one, it's pretty unlikely that any of those parts are likely to survive any length of time, unless it survives in really good condition and I would have to pay a fortune for it. So here I'm stripping the paint, goes in boiling water, I'm outside, and some caustic soda, and that's going to strip the paint off of it. Some of you may have noticed some Prisoner references in my earlier videos. You might see in the race car, the Austin A30. Look at this casting. The thing is shiny. It looks like it just came out of the die cast machine. I stripped the paint off and it looks perfect. I've done all these models from the 40s and the casting all looks terrible underneath the paint. This one, the paint protected the casting. It looks like it's brand new, just popped out of the machine and it's just cooling down. So I'm really pleased with that. So first step is I'm going to go in the spray booth, and I'm using my Tamiya Fine white surface primer, which is the best primer that there is. And that's what I'm putting on there, and I'm going to put another coat of it on there in a minute. So it's a perfect casting. So I didn't have to really I didn't brush it with the wire brush or anything. It's just incredible. So I'm putting this axle from a different toy in there and trying to find different ways to spray paint this thing. So this is getting a second coat of the primer. I want to make sure that all of the dark casting is covered, even at the little corners, because it's going to be white in the end. So as I was saying, there's no parts to this. I have to buy all the parts, and I got them from Steve Flowers. So here I'm opening the box, and woo, there it is. I've got my canopy sticker there, and I got my wheels for my Shadow Mobile, and most of it's for the Prisoner Minimoke. So in this little bag, I've got my steering wheel, got my canopy, and here's my windshield frame, and I believe I have the windshield in there as well, and here's the hood or bonnet, and there I've got my spare tire and the hinge and the steering wheel. So now this is the hinge. It's also the steering wheel support, and the bonnet comes with a nice white metal casting, and it has a rivet on it, and I need to clean up the rivet so that the hinge will fit onto it. I don't know how this was cast, but I needed to take off a bit of the flashing, and there I got it down just to the diameter, and you press it on, and there it is, perfect. It's on there like it would have been from the factory. Fits beautiful. Now I gotta paint the thing. So here's the steering wheel, and the spare tire would have a cover, and they had a actual tire on there, but this is a modern version that you press on, and it has a tire, and it looks like it has a cover, and once you press it on, I realize that's hard to get off. So got to make sure I've got the thing painted and prepared before I do the final assembly, because it's hard to get off. You can't just experimentally test fit it without taking it off with prying it off with a screwdriver. So I got to clean up all the flashing on it, and the file wasn't good enough, so I took a sharp knife and got that all those little bits off of there, and I took off the sprue from the hood hinge or the bonnet hinge. And for spraying the hood or the bonnet, there's no other way than to just sit it down on a piece of baking paper, no-stick baking paper, because there's no really good way of holding that thing without damaging it or creating a part that doesn't get painted. So this is how I decided to do it. Now the hubs, and they're a little bit ragged, a little bit scratched up. So onto the wheel they go, a little bit of compound, and I polish them up, and it winds up polishing the end of the axle as well. These hubs were in really good condition. They're a little bit scratched up. The thing was played with, and the paint had been scraped off of much of it, and the hubs were a little bit scratched up, but not very much, so that just buffing them on the buffing wheel brought them to a beautiful shine, and the same thing with the axles. And here I took out my Allen wrench and put the axles into the same pin vise. So there I've cleaned up. I'm cleaning up. This is actually cleaning the compound off of the hubs. They've been all polished up, and right at the hole there's kind of a burr there. I left the burr there, but I cleaned up everything else. Now here are the tires. They don't look great. They look okay, but I put them in some soap and water and a toothbrush and brushed them all up, and the damn things look brand new. As I go, I'm realizing that these wheels, or tires, they look absolutely perfect. There's not a scratch on them. If I ordered these from the Dinky factory in the 60s, I couldn't have expected a better result. It's amazing. So that was a really good purchase on my part, because that's what I looked for. There were other castings I could get that didn't have the tires and didn't have the hubs. I would have to order those, and the replacement ones are never exactly the same as the original ones. So these ones are just absolutely perfect, and I was very excited when I discovered this, because they're just perfect. So I'm putting the wheels back on, and I'm using my vice grips to clamp it. These are the vice grips that are ground with a rounded part so that it holds the shaft really well, and go in with the ball peen hammer. This time I'm using the peen end of it. And I peen it around, and makes a decent mushroom. And this works out really, really well, and makes a beautiful mushroom on the end. Probably did this too early in the process, but they came out perfect, and I'll have to do the detailing and the additional painting after the wheels are put on, which isn't maybe the best, but I did it early, so I'll just have to do the detailing with the wheels on. So I'm using not the chrome stuff, I'm using the stuff that will look like the original model. So now I'm going on, and I have to tape it up so I can paint the decks. The decks have a kind of a brown color, and the Dinky ones were masked in this way, so I'm trying to match what Dinky did. And it's interesting, on the deck there's these little protrusions, and I looked at the pictures of the real Mini Moke, and those things are white, so I'm gonna have to come back later and make sure that they're white. They always look kind of funky on the Dinky Mini Mokes, because they used a mask and they would spray the color on, and those little things sticking up made it difficult to paint, so they all kind of look weird. So I'm mixing up the paint for that deck color, which is kind of a reddish brown. Some of them look lighter than others, so I put a little bit darker one because I think the darker goes better with the red stripes on the canopy. So I showed the painting of it quickly, and you'll see when I pull this off, you can see that those little things, there's some kind of brackets for the canopy or for some door that I've never seen, and all of the Dinky ones look kind of weird. Now I was going to mask for these little indentations on the side of the frame, and then I said, you know what, I'm just going to brush them on. On the Dinky versions they were masked, and so they all look like there's a bit of overspray on the edges, and they're not perfect. So if I brush it on like this and it's not perfect, I think it's still going to look okay, and it's going to look a lot like the original one without the overspray type of thing, which is okay. because that's what everybody's doing. Now there was overspray on when I taped it. I didn't tape it perfectly, so to clean off the overspray, I use a little bit of the micro mesh sandpaper. That's good for polishing, so I'm using it here. And I take off the color from the white paint. Rather than painting over it, it's better just to sand it off. And now I go on the other side and do the same thing. These Mini Mokes are based on the frame for an Austin Mini, or perhaps a Mini Cooper. I think it was an Austin Mini at that time. So this is the fake spare tire business. The original one had a tire on the back of the Mini Moke, and then there was a plastic cap, and the plastic cap always cracked. So the replacement one, instead of just making that thin cap, they made it all into one piece. So you have to paint the tire part of it black so that it looks like the original. I like this solution because, you know, otherwise you're having to have a tire. Now I put a decal on there, and you don't see it because I ran out of memory. And then I bought decals. It came with the decal for the canopy, but I made better ones. And I found the font, and I made my own decals for the taxi symbols, and they're actually more correct. The lowercase I on the prisoner version, the village version, does not have a dot on the I, and if there had been an E, the E has the top part taken off so that there's no ligature, so that it looks like three lines coming out instead of the top one coming down and making like a loop. So the correct one doesn't have that loop, but anyway, it doesn't matter on this one because taxi doesn't have an E in it, but it does have an I that doesn't have a dot. So I made my own decals because I think it's a little bit better looking than the replacement decals and better matches what was on the TV show. You can see I sanded the mount for the spare tire because otherwise that part doesn't fit on properly and it becomes too tight. So I sanded some of the paint off of it. So this is the peel and stick sticker for the canopy, and so I wanted to fold it ahead of time so that when it goes on, it won't just unpeel itself. So if it's already bent, I figure it's less likely to unpeel itself where it bends around the corners. So that's for the back part, and then I did the same thing for the front. Of course, you have to find where the front is going to be. So I put it on the canopy, found the spot, and then I folded it over a steel rule. Now I cut it to where it was die cut anyway, just so it make it easier for me to peel off the parts that are removed. It's a tricky operation. I was very scared to do it because I was worried I was going to get it wrong. And in the end, you can see, without much extra effort, it goes on pretty good. It was easy to do. And I think folding the decal or the sticker ahead of time made it easier for me to align. I was so worried about it, and then when I come and do it, it just went like nothing. The die cast opening, or the die cut opening, worked perfectly on the back window. So here's those little protrusions. There's some kind of little brackets, and I've never seen a picture of a Minimoke where those brackets do anything, but they are on the Minimoke, and they're white. I was going to paint them silver, but then I looked at all the pictures of the real Minimokes, and they're all white. So I decided I'm going to paint them white so they look like the real Minimoke. And I'm using the nail brush, nail painting brush, because it gives me much more control. So now for the tail lights, I'm again using the nail brush. This is the end with, here I try it with the brush, and I find that the end with the metal ball works better. So I came back with the metal ball. It's not a brush, but it paints better than a brush. It has more control on these small models. So this little orange light was not painted on the original one, but I looked at the original, or the real Minimoke pictures, and it's kind of another kind of marker lamp, and I thought the orange worked better. And for the front, of course, it has orange. Now, these Minimokes for the prisoner have an antenna, and I couldn't find an antenna that looked like the original antenna. There's somebody selling an antenna, but it looks like it's for some different Dinky toy. So I decided I was going to make my own antenna, and I went to the lathe, and I decided I'm going to make my own antenna. I had a little trouble drilling that. I didn't tighten the tailstock, so it kind of moved, but I said this is not critical that the thing be precision. It's just going to be an antenna, so I just went with it, and it won't be on center, but nobody will ever notice because that's just an antenna. So you can see my process. I loosen up the collet and adjust the thing, and then I tighten the collet. You can see it tightening back, and then I put a little piece of Tupperware underneath it and use the parting tool and cut my little base of the antenna off, and instead of falling into the swarf in the pan of the lathe, it falls into the Tupperware. So I reach in there, find it. There it is, a tiny little piece made out of brass. So there it is. It still has a piece that didn't come off, so I just cut it off with wire cutters. And I'll file the base smooth. So there's where it fits, looks good. So for the antenna itself, I use a piece of copper wire. I was going to solder this together, so I have copper and brass. It would solder, and I thought, well, what do I need to heat up the soldering iron? I'll just use 5-minute epoxy, like I use for a lot of things on these toys. So my usual trick, I mix up the epoxy on a block of notepad from our printers at work. They give them to us for free, and the government gives us other ones for free, and just glue the thing together. And then I want to have there's a little ball on top of the prisoner Minimoke antenna. That's the only Minimoke that has an antenna. The ball comes out a little bit bigger than it needed to be, but it doesn't really matter. I think it winds up looking pretty good. So So there, it's hardened. I didn't show you our hardening. I just paused the camera, and then after it hardened, cut off the piece of paper, goes into the spray booth, and paint it white. So now you don't know that it's made out of copper and brass. It might as well be a piece of white plastic. And I spray a little of the gloss finish onto it, super clear. And there we have it, my Prisoner Minimoke antenna. So I've got my spare tire. Push that on the back, put it on crooked. I straightened it out later. And my hood goes on. And now the windshield. So I've got my gloves on because I don't want my fingerprints all over this. Once this is together, I want it all to be clean and free of fingerprints. So windshield frame. The steering wheel goes in. This is an interesting design because the steering wheel is crooked, but the hole for it is straight. So it has that holder, and it goes into the hole, and the holder puts it at the right angle, so it looks like perfect angle for the steering wheel. And now the canopy. So the canopy is a challenge. It has to be on the windshield frame on the front, and on the back slides into a designed slot in the casting, and then there's the holes for those posts. I have a green Minimoke in perfect condition, and the canopy is a little bit more rigid than the replacement canopy. So you kind of got to fiddle with this thing to get it into position. And in the end, it goes on pretty good. And once it's there, it's happy. So I was going to make a decal for this, but it came with the sticker. And the original had a round sticker like this with the penny farthing symbol of the village. And so I decided I'm going to use that so that it looks like the original toy. And I aligned the wheels of the penny farthing because it's easy to want to put it on a tilt, but you need to have the small back wheel lining up with the front big wheel. And now a little bit of white glue for the antenna. So just a tiny bit, because this is going to sit in a display case. It's not going to be played with by a child. In fact, I wonder even if this toy should ever have been released for children, because everything on it is delicate. And you can see it from many of the toys that are available now, is they're all destroyed. So here's where we began with my raw casting, painted green. It's a little bit scratched up, and turns out that it's only a little bit scratched up. This, aside from having lost all of its accessories, this toy is in really excellent condition, which surprised me when I got it. So let's see what it looks like now. So this is the Minimoke as it looked as a dinky toy, but also as it looked in the Prisoner show. The Minimoke was important because it was in every episode, and it was their way of getting around town. So it's a perfect vehicle to show what the Prisoner was all about. I'm a big fan of the Prisoner, as you can probably guess by now, and if you want to look back at my previous videos, you can find little hints here and there with Prisoner references. Remember to subscribe and like and share, and that's how we get more of these videos, and makes me feel good when you do that stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. I certainly enjoyed it, and I can't wait for next video. So until next time,
be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Nothing, Dave.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you. Be seeing you. Be seeing you.
No! I'll be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
And you.
Our local council wishes to announce another exciting...
Au revoir.
You'll be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
And you. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
And you.
Be seeing you. Be seeing you. Be seeing you. Be seeing you. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Thanks a lot. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you. Or your swim. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Come one, come all. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
I'll be seeing you both.
Be seeing you. Be seeing you. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you, sir.
Be seeing you. Be seeing you.
And you.